This is the I Read Comic Books podcast, the very best podcast for regular comic book fans. I'm your host, Mike Rappin, and joining me this week, two random punkers I met in my travels through northern Italy. This week, I'm joined by Nick White.
I'm giving you devil horns, but you can't see it.
Oh, thank you. This week, I'm also joined by Kait Lamphere.
Yes, I am very punk.
You guys, thank you so much. I appreciate that. We are here to talk about comic books as we usually do, but in specific, we are talking about comic books that meet our Goodreads theme of the month around the world, comics published outside of the US. Now, there is a small line of distinguishing explanation that I think I need to add here, because we were talking about this and I misquoted this theme when I sent out my weekly email to the rest of the show folks. We've done a similar theme in the past, talking about comic books not originally published in English versus comics published outside of the US. And there's a very different thing there, because there are comics that are published outside of the United States that are published in English. So that kind of didn't necessarily meet the divider. So just to be clear on that, folks, we were looking for comics that were just published outside the United States, because there are plenty of comics around the world. And I think we found some incredible ones. I know Kait and Nick have some great picks, but I do want to shout out some of the folks on our Goodreads group who picked some incredible books that I know I definitely should probably read. Judge Dredd America was a book that was nominated. The Adoption by Zidro and Arno Monin, translated by Jeremy Milol. Hirayasumi, I can never say that name right. Volume 1 by Kigo Shinzo. We actually read this on our Discord group. It was really, really cute. I need to go back and read more of it, because the first volume is just serene and nice. So glad somebody else is reading that book. Largo Winch by Philippe Franck and Jean Van Ham. Lucky Luke, which is a very old comic, but I think this is like a Belgian book published or created by a cartoonist named Morris. Somebody else nominated Aya, Life in Yop City by Margaret Aboué from the Ivory Coast. I think Aaron was going to be reading that. So a lot of really good picks. There's even more in the thread, so I'll put a link to that in the show notes. Tons of books if you're looking to read comics that weren't originally published in the United States. There are a lot of them. But we're here to talk about comic books that we read, not books that other people have read. So I have two legally mandated questions that I have to ask for the show, and that is, how have you been? How have comic books been? I'm very worried because Nick hasn't said anything for at least a minute and a half, but we'll start with you, Nick. How have you been? How have comic books been?
I've been okay. Having been awake for maybe all of about 25, 30 minutes at this point. Pretty good for that. If there ever was a time to reconsider getting back on coffee, I think it would have been this morning. I was up way too late last night because I have the internet, and went to promptly go to bed and just grab a cup to have some water right before bed. And promptly broke the large oversized mug all over the floor and just shattered it into a bunch of pieces, and went under all the nooks and crannies underneath the counters, and it broke right over the drying rack for some of the stuff that you don't typically put in the dishwasher. And so I had to hand vac everything and wipe down the counters and go over everything on the drying rack with a fine-toothed comb. And I wouldn't be as worried, but my brother-in-law and my sister and my niece visit every couple, I see them every couple days, and you just safety-wise just was it. Yeah. Otherwise I just leave broken shit all over the floor. If no one else is coming over, fend for yourself. Like,
right.
Normally I am a no, don't wear shoes in the house. But when I break stuff, you better bring your boots. You better bring your steel-toed boots, because it's going to be a minefield.
Nick's living that die-hard life, right? Where you're just Bruce Willis walking over the glass, right?
Yeah. Sometimes when I just need to live a little, I just break a couple things and I just start doing the worm. All along the floor.
Right. Okay. Okay.
Otherwise, just
there's a Limp Bizkit joke in there somewhere that I'm just gonna leave. I'm not gonna try to make it work. So, Nick, have you been reading anything now other than breaking glasses?
Yes. I did read something for the theme this month. I read Golden Gold by Saita Horio. This manga, obviously, as you might guess, came from Japan. It began in Kodansha's seinen manga magazine Morning 2 in October of 2015, with the first volume coming out in Japan the following year. There have been 9 volumes so far, the 9th released in Japan in 2021. Kodansha USA licensed the rights for this in North America. They released translations of all 9 volumes between 2022 and 2023. Is it done? I don't know. The best I can find is the last volume being released in Japan. There's no additional information on if it's done or not. And as is the case with a lot of things like this, I get really nervous about trying to look into if it's done, because I feel like inadvertently somehow looking that stuff up is going to show up with a spoiler at some point.
Absolutely.
So I don't even want to like traipse around on that too much. But right out of the gate, 9 volumes for a manga. Very attractive, very nice.
Reasonable, not 30 volumes, you know?
Right. Like 9, I think for a lot of people is like, just 9. What happened? What's wrong? Yeah. What a bad book. No, it's a really, really weird story. And I think that's why I like it. The story follows this girl named Ruka. She lives on one of Japan's remote islands named Naijima. And I'm not sure if this is meant to be the real life island of Nijima, a fictional analog of that island, or if this is a weird translation issue. But Kodansha is normally on top of these things, and I don't see, things like that. Nick, do you know any Japanese? No, but Kodansha.
This could be an intentional misspelling to be like, it's the same place, but it's not,
fictional
right?
Analog. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'm not sure. But regardless, Ruka's got a lot to think about when this book opens. Front and foremost is whether or not she's going to basically go to the mainland to start high school. Her best friend, Oikawa, who she also kind of holds a torch for, is doing the same thing. He's basically said, I'm going to go live with my dad in Osaka. Obviously, school is super important, and the competition around here on this island with, how many other kids is just not that great. So Ruka, meanwhile, is just living with her grandmother. She runs a small inn on the island. One day when she's taking the ferry back to Naijima with her friend, Ruka runs into this couple from Tokyo that have booked a stay at her grandmother's place, which is a really big deal because I think she says something to the effect of like, I've had 2 visitors within the last 10 years at my inn. Like, nobody comes. Yikes. This island really isn't known for anything. It's not a big tourist place. But when they're talking with this couple mentions that, this island was visited by a god of fortune a long time ago, and the wife is here to write a novel. She's looking to be inspired. She wants a new setting to write a book in, so she thinks this is the perfect place. And things really kick off because later Ruka is hunting for oysters on the beach, and she runs into the couple again, who she basically blew off earlier, and sort of shows them how to look for oysters. And she runs into this weird figurine on the shoreline, and it kind of looks like a Buddha statue, but it's sort of been warped and worn by the sun and by the water, and it's sort of slimy and gross. And if you just look up Golden Gold, the book, if you just look up Golden Gold, you can all of the artwork, that's all of the promo work for this book, features this statue prominently, and it is so unnerving. It's really really, really creepy. Like any of the creepy pastas for like Ocarina of Time, where it's like the little like unblinking like Tingle or whatever, the little elf or whatever, like those sorts of fears and emotions is what this statue channels for me.
Okay.
So she finds the statue, and at first she thinks it's even like sort of like a mummified little body or something. She's not sure, but she like takes it
aliens
home.
In Mexico.
Who knows what it could be, honestly.
Sure.
But so she takes it home, and tries to wash it and clean it and ends up breaking off its arm, and it only ends up looking worse. And she like turns to Google and she's like, well, maybe this is like a god of fortune, which is like a real part of Japanese mythology. You can look up 7 lucky gods and you'll find stuff about it. So her grandma's like, if you're gonna get rid of this and it's weirding you out, like just go find one of the shrines on the island and just leave it there, and that'll do it. And she does, and it comes to life, and it just starts chasing her. Like the mouth doesn't change, like it's got like this unblinking sort of face. It starts chasing her. She gets on her bike, it speeds up and starts keeping pace with the bike. And like ETs her and jumps in the basket on the front of the bike, and the bike starts like lifting up a little, and she like flings the bike against the edge of the road, and the basket, you know, flips and it chucks the statue into the drink. And she goes, well, thank God, basically, I'm done with this thing. She bikes home and back to the inn where the out-of-towners are having dinner with her grandmother. And guess who else is sitting at the table in a chair? The statue? And the grandmother's like, oh, look, we have another visitor. It's this guy from out of town. And Ruka is like, that's the statue. And her grandma is like, no, this is this old guy we know. And then the two out-of-towners are just freaked out completely. And they're like, do you see this too? Yeah, it's absolutely wild. And it turns into this theory that the husband puts together where he realizes that if you aren't from the island, you see the statue. And if you're from the island, you just see it as a normal person. Well, what's going on here? It's full of mystery. It's really weird. There's a little bit of like a Twin Peaks vibe going on here for me. There's definitely some like a quirky little community trying to figure out what's going on. Like clearly things are changing in this community, and it feels like the statue is doing it. The day after this thing sits in the inn, 7 people call and suddenly want to reserve a room at the inn, despite like not having any requesters for years and years. And they move the statue upstairs to the shop that's over the inn, and within like a week, the shop is completely sold out of all of its supplies.
I see.
So clearly this thing has some powers, and it's able to attract influence, and it's able to do certain things. But what's its intent? What is it trying to do? What does it want? What is it really? Honestly, is it a god? Is it some malevolent force? And you see it start to also exert psychologically or metaphysically exert power over some of these people in the community, especially as people start to think it may or may not have abilities and try to simultaneously use them for their own benefit and also hide them from other people in the community who may also want to use it. So, yeah, it's hard to succinctly get at this book because it's doing so many weird things.
Yeah, I mean, I was looking up this author, and it looks like they're known for doing kind of supernatural weird stories in general. So I'm guessing that this is the commonality, is that they just like to do weirdo little books about unnerving little guys. So
yeah. I mean, I assume by now you must have looked up this statue thing, because the moment you see that, it's like, especially because it's so prominent on the covers of the collected volumes, and it's like, this was a bold choice because it definitely evokes the feeling you want to feel for this book. But like when you look at it right on the cover, you're like, oh man, like I'm here for this, but also maybe I'm not. Like, I don't even know if I want to get into this. It's creepy shit. I would totally recommend this book.
Okay.
It really feels like something different.
It doesn't sound to me like it's horror.
Yeah. I think it's going that way, maybe a little. Like I said, you start to feel like it's having a transformative effect on people, and it might be physical in some ways. I don't know. Yeah.
Okay. How did you come across this book, Nick? Were you just like looking for weird stuff on Kodansha's website or what?
I think it came up in a sale, and Kodansha really for me is like the publisher that I trust. Like I find they haven't steered me wrong for the most part. And, I know some people aren't going to like this, but for me, sometimes I'm just trying to find something that isn't shonen. Look, there's a couple shonen books I like and I enjoy, but sometimes I do not want to keep track of power levels and that was a cyclonic beam level 4. Of course he killed that guy. Okay. Like,
I mean, if you're able to keep track of any shonen manga like that, as if any of those there are rules, I'm impressed.
Yeah. Well, and that is the one thing I do worry about a little with this book, is that it is starting to have the faint trappings of what I call Death Note syndrome, which is where it becomes less of a reading experience and becomes more of a prose logic puzzle of, oh, well, I wrote this guy's name in the book, but on days that start with the letter T, it only kills every third person unless it's March of a leap year. And it's like, okay, well, that makes sense.
I mean, listen, there are rules like that in Death Note, but we don't have to discuss Death Note. I guess, well, Nick, this sounds very interesting, if only because I do like a good creepy manga book. I don't necessarily need to read horror and blood and guts or whatever, but like a nice book that's got some creep to it, right? Like a Junji Ito book can be fun every once in a while. It sounds like you found something in a similar-ish vein, at least.
Yeah, I think that this does not obviously have the body horror of Junji Ito, but the weird unsettling factor is 100% there. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, Kait, let's kick over to you. How have you been? How have comic books been?
Yeah, I've been all right. I've been really invested in a couple of different projects. Like I'm looking into copying all of my reading data over to Storygraph, which is a big deal. I've got thousands of books logged.
Yeah. So. Wait, is that like a manual process you have to do or what?
They do have an automatic import from Goodreads, but it doesn't include certain things like the day that you started reading the book, because Goodreads doesn't export everything, which I'm very annoyed by. So I'm just filling in all of the extra data manually, which is a punishment. I am punishing myself. But otherwise, Storygraph has been a very cool platform. So if you're looking for a Goodreads alternative on our Goodreads episode today, I am on Storygraph, and I recommend looking into it. I'm also trying to start my vegetable garden for the season, which is not going super well. I killed 3 sets of seedling starters, so I'm bad at this still, 8 years in. But I have been reading a lot of comics, so
the fact that you keep trying, that is something. Kait.
Thank you.
Maybe this year you'll get some carrots or whatever you're trying to grow. I don't know what you're trying to grow, but something.
Yeah.
Maybe tomatoes. I don't know.
Yeah, definitely lots of tomatoes. Those usually tend to grow whether I want them to grow or not.
Right,
like they just pop up in my soil regardless. So I'll get tomatoes someplace. Maybe it will be 8 feet away from where I planted them, but we'll see. All right. So anyway, books. I read a comic called Trese, Volume 1, Murder on Beldet Drive, I think, was available as a Hoopla bonus borrow back in February, and so I checked that out. I think I ended up reading it on the last day before it automatically checked back in, and I was like, maybe I don't read this. I do that thing where I check out all of the bonus borrows or almost all of them, and then I'm like, maybe I don't want to read all of these.
Sure.
But I'm glad that I read this because I have now read a few more volumes and checked out the animated series on Netflix. And I'm really enjoying this. This is by Bujet Tan and Kajo Baldissimo. This is from the Philippines. As far as I can tell, it was released in English, but there are occasionally Filipino words used for like folklore creatures and magic words, and you can tell when something's about to be supernatural because Filipino is used.
Okay.
This is like a modern noir urban fantasy with the supernatural element of folklore creatures, and it has a female lead, which I'm really enjoying. It's kind of in the vein of like the Dresden Files or Rivers of London or October Day or Lockwood and Company. Like this is a whole genre at this point, right?
Yeah.
But I really like the folklore from the Philippines. That's a very cool way to make this like a different and to help me to know more about the Philippines, because that is a country that I am not familiar with terribly.
Yeah.
In this book, Trese took over her father's like role as an ambassador with all these folklore creatures in the city, and so she knows like a whole network of people that he built relationships with before he passed away or whatever happened to him. I don't actually know if I know yet. But she has like the benefit of this network, but she still has to go through and prove herself to all of these different organizations and all these different creatures. So we see like she has this knowledge, but we still see her having to make decisions to like not piss people off, and so she doesn't lose their connection. And in some arcs, Trese helps a creature with something, and in other arcs, she has to like fight like a rogue creature. So they're not like necessarily bad or good; they're just people, really. I've read through volume 3 at this point, and volume 3 really fills out like backstory lore for these characters. Like you learn more about her dad, and she has these two guys that help her that are kind of like, who are these people that can float, and they seem to know more than humans know, and so you kind of finally learn a little bit about them. They're very cool, like stylized. They have like the theater masks. One is like a happy mask and one is a sad mask, but they're stylized in a very unique way, and they also wear suits. Very cool characters. So anyway, I feel like the volumes on Hoopla have to be like new additions, because the front and back matter reference like the success of the series and like the Netflix adaptation, but that definitely didn't happen for a couple of volumes, I don't think. Like I've started this Netflix adaptation, it's animated, and there's like some backstory that I'm just reading worked into the first episode. So I think that it must have been almost done or maybe completely finished by the time Netflix picked it up. As far as I can tell, there are 8 volumes, and I think it's complete. I'm not quite sure, but they do have their own website on Blogspot, Trese Comics with a K and an X blogspot.com. So they I think that they're being published in the US by I can't remember, a regular comic book publisher at this point, but
yeah, no, I was actually looking into this a little bit, and apparently comics, Komiks, is like a reference to Filipino specific comics, right? Like you got your manga, manhwa, all, that different types of words to describe kind of the same thing, but apparently that spelling like that, Komiks, is the like phrase that has been used to describe Filipino comics since the 20s.
Wow.
Which I didn't know until today. I just, digging through the Wikipedia for Trese. But yeah, that's kind of a cool little thing. So Kait, you read a comic today.
Yeah.
A Komik comic.
Yeah. Okay, that's cool. I looked up the American publisher, and it's a Blaze. So I haven't read
Blaze.
much about them, but
yeah,
cute. A nice little book. It's all on Hoopla. So
nice. Well, let me tell a little bit about myself. I am still without comics here in the office. For those of you watching the video on Patreon, it's still very sad, but I did try to read some comics this week. I read the latest issue of Absolute Martian Manhunter, which ruled. I read what else did I read? Something else that was kind of good, but the Absolute Wonder Woman. Apparently all the books I'm reading nowadays are just ultimates and the Absolute books, and then whatever Image books that I can read. I read Those Not Afraid 1-4. Nick was talking about that recently, and I was like, well, I should try that serial killer book. And spoilers, it's pretty good. Kyle Stark's pretty good writer. If you want more about that, listen to last week's episode. But I did try to find a book for the theme this week that wasn't just your standard, like, oh, I'm gonna read a Franco-Belgian book, or I'm gonna read a manga. Not to say that Nick didn't try. I'm just saying, like, that is my go-to thought of just like, oh, I'll read some Humanoids
Tintin
comics, or I'll read
Asterix and Obelix. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, exactly. So I wanted to find something different. So I was Googling around a little bit, and I came across this book that was published in the United States in 2013, but originally came out in like 2003 in Germany or Austria. I couldn't pinpoint it down, but it came out in the German Austrian area. It's a book called I don't have my notes up. This is the Last Day of the Rest of Your Life, written and drawn by Uli Lust. Like I said, originally published in Germany in 2009 via Avant Verlag in Berlin, and then in 2013 it was published by Fantagraphics. This book won a couple of different awards at like Angoulême in France, and you can read the first 5 chapters on the website electrocomics.com, which is managed by Uli Lust. She's a professor at a university, and this story has nothing to do with her being a professor. It's about her life in the 1980s. It's like in 1984, a rebellious 17-year-old punked out Uli Lust set out for a wild hitchhiking trip across Italy from Naples through Verona and Rome, and ending up in Sicily. 25 years later, this talented Austrian cartoonist has looked back at that tumultuous summer and delivered a long, dense, sensitive, and minutely observed autobiographical masterpiece. I'll throw this out there before anyone starts to even dig into this book remotely. Content warnings for sexual assault and hard drug use. Is the 80s in the USSR, pushing really hard, border controls around Italy and Austria, and it's a very intense book. Even though the presentation of the intensity of the book isn't so obvious, I don't know. There is a lot of the story of Uli as she travels through Italy, jumping over the border from Austria. It can be very happy and then go to some serious dark stuff and then right back to happy. There are scenes of Uli discussing like her friend Edie, who is this her closest friend suddenly throughout the book, who ends up being this total monstrous human by the end, who really sees nothing and no one as being useful, including Uli, who she has basically convinced that she needs to go to the south of France with, as she starts to turn her friend out as kind of a prostitute or sex worker. And it's very rough, but nonetheless, it is a very interesting comic book to read because, one, I don't know anything about Central-ish Europe during the 1980s. Like, I know of the Cold War. I know that at some point Reagan said, "Bring this wall down," but like that is not really what was happening, I think, in the 80s. I never read a book that happened around this time. So it was interesting to see the way that that Lust like kind of described her time using a combination of like scanned in letters that she had written herself or postcards that she had taken photos of, or there's a couple of photos of people that she was with at the time. Some of them have blurred out faces who she would prefer not to talk about. Like her friend Edie in the book is a fake name that she gives for the real woman that she traveled with. And yeah, like throughout the story, I mean, like she is a 17-year-old girl and she has to make money. And so she begs on the streets. She, does some sex work. She does pretty much anything she can to get to the south of Italy. And it's a strange story. I don't know. I could not help but continue reading of it. It was like 460 pages collected together. Wow. But like, every moment I wanted to stop, I was like, but like, where the fuck does this story go? Like, that was all I could keep asking myself, right? Like, clearly this woman survived. I'm sure there were plenty of other people who had a similar story to Uli Lust in the 1980s who maybe didn't survive through this, right? Mm-hmm. There is an enormous amount of time in this book spent on how men treated her as a 17-year-old woman. And how they were constantly grabbing at her or calling out to her or walking up to her and say, "Hey, I'll give you 10,000 lira to, come sleep with me tonight," right? Like, that was like the state of things, apparently, according to like how Uli lived her life there. And it's a really, I don't know, depressing but still like interesting story to read about like what life was like in 1984 in Italy, as an Austrian girl traveling south. So yeah, overall, like this isn't like a bad book to read, right? I wouldn't say this is a fun book to read, but it is a very interesting book to read. The story doesn't really end with a wild like climax of story where Uli gets everything she ever wanted and yada yada yada. I mean, the story ends with Uli just continuing life, and this is just a picture into a slice of her life that she lived. What's interesting that I found about this book is there aren't really any hard dates. We know that the book is taking place in 1984. We don't know when or where. We know that it starts in kind of like springtime and it ends at kind of the end of winter. But it's at one point she sneaks into a concert to see the Clash, which apparently was life-changing for her at the time. As she was, her and her friends were just sneaking around being kind of vagrants in the Italian countryside and stuff. But yeah, it's a beautiful looking book overall. I think it's a rough, like Uli Lust style it's probably Lust, not Lust. Now that I think about it, it's German, but their art style it's rough, but it's strong in its portrayal of like people and their emotions and the environment in which Uli was living. And I think it's really, I don't know, like there's something about it that feels very DIY comics with an X about it, but at no point did I feel like, oh, this is bad or this is ugly. This doesn't make sense. The way that Lust just like portrays people in this book feels very cartoonish and almost like caricatures, but of real people that you would see on the street. Like her friend Edie has this face that almost looks like too long and pointed, and the way that she draws Edie's body is very like, it's almost like cartoony and like noodle like in the way that she's shaped, because clearly she's trying to depict these like very perky breasts and these like very long slender arms and legs and all these different things and like these very pointed features that she has on her body, but like it's cartoonish. But then you think about it and it's like a caricature of a real person, and you're like, there are attributes on this person's face, or the way that this person's is standing or sitting, that look really exaggerated, but like when you look at real people, you're like, oh, this is just taking a human being and kind of adding a little bit extra to it. I don't know. I found it really interesting the way that like she would play with proportion, and she would play with like exaggerating features on people, like giving people just monstrous schnozzes, right? It's not really, people don't have like 8-inch long noses, but you've seen a person that has just a really big nose, and you're like, that's the defining feature of that person. So yeah, I really liked it. I thought it was a really interesting read. I'd never heard of this book before, even though it's like an award-winning comic. But yeah, it came out in 2013. And yeah, so if you're looking for kind of a rougher comic to read that'll just kind of ground you, today is the last day of the rest of your life is a book to read. But again, really want to press on you the content warning here about drug use and sexual assault. It is not just a moment in the book, to say the least. Yeah, so that's what I read, because you guys know me. I love to read books that will just break me up. So I'm glad you guys read something kind of fun. But yeah, let's move on. Let's talk about books that are on the top of our pile, whether they are new or old or just something we want to get off of our shelves, something that we're going to be reading next. I want to shout out our buddy Paul, who's hanging out with us live on Discord. Paul's going to be reading The Fables of Errol King Wood by Junie Ba and Aditya Bidikar. That is a book I cannot wait to get my copy of. I think it's in the mail. It was a Kickstarter. I'm very excited to read that as well. But I will kick things over to, let's say, Kait. What is on the top of your pile this week?
Yeah, I picked up this adorable looking book called The Baker and the Bard, a cozy fantasy adventure. This is by Fern Hott, which is a name that sounds like they would write this exact kind of story. This is about two friends who are like content in their lives. One is a baker and one is a bard, and they have to go foraging for mushrooms to make a specific dish. So they're in a forest, and they kind of stumble upon investigating a mystery. Something has been stealing the farmer's crops and leaving a trail of goo behind. So they go and try to figure out what's going on. And the cover of this is all like bright colors, and it looks very cute. And I can't help but be reminded of the book Off Menu that I talked about a couple of months ago on the show. Like, this is another cozy YA food themed character driven story, and I'm gonna love it.
Thank you for taking the tone of the show in a different direction, Kate. I appreciate it. This looks absolutely adorable. Holy smokes. Just the cover alone, I'm like, I'm in. I'm sold. You've got flute playing people. There's bugs flying. I mean, come on.
Yeah, this is just a basket of bread off to the side. Like, they're sitting on a roof. This is going to be adorable.
I'm so happy for you. This is awesome.
Thank you.
Well, let me talk about what's on the top of my pile. I guess one more person snuck in. Avocado Kenobi snuck in last minute. They're finishing the last 4 volumes of Attack on Titan. Oh, man. I shouldn't have even announced that. Good luck with that.
Yeah.
That's some rough stuff. But for me this week, I am going to be reading Gravity Tide #1. This is written by Camille Longley, art by Sarah Bollinger, colors by Fariza Kapamputra, and letters by Joel Saavedra. This is a Kickstarter book that I backed a while ago. I think I just got a copy of it recently. And the story is 20 years ago, a seismic event opened a portal to another dimension. The International Rift Expedition called on the best and brightest scientists of Earth to explore the depths and secrets of the Rift. The Rift's peaceful science outposts are now threatened by forces these scientists do not yet understand. Hope lies in their children, kids who have only known a world where gravity plays games and strange creatures roam the skies. For anyone who's listened to this show for a little while, Camille Longley is the writer of a series called Lamp Black that I loved and didn't love at the same time, like a book that I found so frustratingly interesting that I couldn't help but continue reading it. And yet I had so many problems with it at the same time. And I'm like, I gotta see what this author is doing elsewhere to like really get a full grasp on how she's approaching storytelling. So I backed this book on Kickstarter because she announced in the Lamp Black Kickstarter that this was a new series coming out from her. So this looks cool. I really love the way that Longley does world building. So I really want to see what she could do with a sci-fi world instead of like a steampunky world, which is what Lamp Black was. It was like fantasy steampunk together, but plus the artwork in this, just from the previews by Bollinger and Kamaputra, looked stellar. Just like really bright, wondrous, like world building in the page. And so I'm really excited to see what that all looks like as a story come together. So that should be fun. Nick, what about you? What is on the top of your pile this week?
Yeah, so for me, it's going to be Lost Fantasy #1. Script by Kurt Pyers, who wrote The Tomorrows, Indigo Children, Lost Falls. Art by Luca Casalanguida, who did the art for James Bond Hammerhead, as well as several other James Bond runs. I think probably 4, maybe 5 arcs total. He worked on Money with Kurt Pyers. He also did Scout's Honor for Aftershock, colors by Mark Dale, letters by Micah Myers. I really decided to go back and read this book. Or rather, I picked this book because I decided to go back and read Indigo Children. I had read part of the first issue a while ago, I think roughly when it came out. I know that this book was a big deal for Mike. I think it came up on the show several times.
I just thought it was a cool take on like conspiracies and superheroes and yeah. But go ahead.
And it totally is. I think what didn't help me was that I didn't really love Pyers' offerings with Comixology originals. I had really liked Pyers' original stuff with Dark Horse before that, but then the original stuff just really didn't hit me really well. Lost Falls especially, which really felt like it was meant for me and then turned out to be more of a muddled mess than I really wanted it to be. And Indigo Children, unfortunately, right out of the gate is a pretty dense book. There's a lot of multi-panel pages that I think get up into the 9, 12, 14 panels. And it's very text dense, at least at the beginning. Yeah. But I think what really works is that in that book, the artwork is actually like really, really solid. I super enjoyed it. And I was like, okay, I like the conspiracy theory going on here. I think that this really has potential. So I plowed through the whole thing. I really enjoyed it. I sort of was like, okay, maybe some of what I was dealing with before, maybe that was Comixology originals. Maybe there was some editorial control stuff going on. Maybe not. Maybe it's just Pyers changing what he writes. I'm not going to rampantly speculate on that, but I really enjoyed that book. Lost Fantasy for me seems a little more high concept than I really would have expected to see from Pyers.
Interesting.
But the artwork looks interesting. And it's just very weird that Pyers is going to bookend this book, Lost Fantasy, with the continuation of Indigo Children. And I guess I should mention, just from now that I've talked about Indigo Children so much, the solicit from Image for Lost Fantasy is that there's a world of magic, myth, and monsters that exists beneath the surface of our own. Since first contact was made over 100 years ago, the great hunters have kept us safe from the creatures that lurk in the shadows. But last night something broke through, and it's up to rookie monster hunter Henry Blackheart to stop it.
Dude,
like,
where's the high concept? It's Devil May Cry.
Well, I mean, it's very much like we live in this world. There's all these secret, shadowy things out there, and someone is going to protect us. And whether that's, Tyler Cook's, what is it, Lonesome Hunters, or Buffy the Vampire Slayer, this idea that someone is going to keep us safe from the monsters that creep or whatever in the dark. Tale as old as time. I
you hear that, Kate? This is like Buffy, so get on board.
I anticipate that maybe this is just a super elevator pitch, and Pyers will inject some interesting nuance into that. But it sounds interesting, and as much as I make fun of or question the fact that Pyers is bookending his new book by continuing his old book, even though there seems to be no canonical or narrative through line, it's the main reason I'm reading the new book, so clearly this works. If there was an argument to be made for it, I guess that's me. So in as much as I question it, it's working.
I mean, I've read this already. I have a feeling that you will dig this more than you dug Indigo Children. I think Indigo Children hits you a bit more with like the punchiness of like a word salad to start you off to establish the world. Lost Fantasy is just like straight on the road. Like, there is nothing to really lead you up by. The story is being told. There's no lead up to actually get you to the story. It's just happening. This is, in my opinion, it is exactly like every Rick Remender #1. And I know that right there is setting off some alarm bells for you, Nick, where the story doesn't really start until the hook of the end of issue 1. But if you given Kurt Pyers is, especially like Indigo Children, to go back to that, Pyers is want to front load you with a bunch of information. Instead, he gets to stretch it out a little bit over an issue. And then you get to the interesting stuff. I will say the last like 6 pages, I didn't think I was feeling it all the way. And then it ramps up and you go, oh, snap, this is cool. So I have a feeling you may dig this. Now, of course, now that I've said that, Nick's going to come back on the show next time. Book. He's going to say, I hated this book. Mike was wrong. And then in 7 months, he's going to say, Mike, have you read this Lost Fantasy book? It's actually pretty good. So
the gaslighting will commence.
Yes. But I do think that your issues with Indigo Children don't exist in Lost Fantasy, and the story feels just as rich.
Yeah,
I'll just leave it there.
And honestly, amidst all my criticism for Indigo Children, I still think the conspiracy theories and whatnot in the first half were infinitely more interesting to me than the Rock'em Sock'em third act.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm still really interested to see where that universe goes. Again, what a weird, like, honestly, have you ever seen somebody carry on one of their old books at the end of one of their new books, and like seemingly there's no narrative through? Like, it would be one thing if it's like, I have a new book coming out, it's in the same universe, and I'm going to continue the stories together. Like, unless this is a really clever backdoor pilot sort of way to slam these two things together, which I don't think it is.
Yeah.
It's just weird. It's weird.
It is.
And we used to see with Image, right? Sometimes we used to see, maybe this was what happened. I want to say it was like Brisson, or maybe it was like, who did Criminal? Was that Rucka?
No, Ed Brubaker.
Brubaker, Jesus. Look, I'm sorry that several of the like crime noir Image writers got mixed up. But wasn't it one of these writers had it where like they're like, hey, I'm continuing this story, or I'm going to do like short stories. Maybe it was Criminal, and like, you're only going to get them if you buy this physical, right? Wasn't there something?
Yes, that was a Criminal thing that they did, where you wouldn't get the backups that were, if I'm not mistaken, they were prose.
Maybe
but it was
it.
But it was only,
which I guess
physical.
Goes back to my point that this does feel uniquely. I don't know if I've seen this done before.
Yeah. I mean, we'll see how long it even goes, right? Maybe they only do this for the first arc. Maybe they only do this whatever. But I think I really want you to read this issue and to read that backup before you start to make any more judgments about it. I'll just say that, because I think like the concept feels weird, but when you actually read it, it's something else. I'll just leave it there.
Okay. Yeah. Fair enough.
Cool. Well, I think that's going to do it for us today. Kait, are you going to check out Lost Fantasy now that we've compared it to Buffy, or is this not?
I do think that I've kind of bookmarked it to eventually check out. Yeah.
I mean, the Buffy comparison is a weak one. I think it's more just like, hey, like weird fantasy, urban fantasy-ish, right? There's like a whole other secret world beyond us, that like there's a secret society that keeps us protected from them. It's a pretty good book. I will say, I think if you like that idea of urban fantasy coming together, I think this book would click for you. There's one bit that I just want to talk to you guys about forever, but we'll have to wait till you at least read the first issue before I can start making the jokes I want to make.
Let's just sit down. We can all read it right now.
Oh yeah, right. We'll read it right now here on the show. You'll have to wait for the post credits for that. So patrons only. But I think that's going to do it for us today. I'd be curious to know if anybody out there else, if you read anything that's not published in the United States and there's a book that we didn't already list or talk about today that you would recommend. Make sure to send us an email at ircbpodcast@gmail.com. I want to thank Nick and Kait for their time today. Thank you to everyone listening live, specifically Paul, who's been hanging out with us the entire time. I want to say thanks to Xander for editing today. And, as we say, until next time, comics are good, and so are you.